It's the days of open range. Picture yourself horseback with 1,000 head of longhorn cattle in front of you. Your job? To push these longhorns 1,000 miles from Texas to Kansas up to the railheads at Abilene. There are 15 cowboys, most the age of about 15 to 20, and one old grumpy cook. But as the wind kicks up across the prairie, you see a thunderhead brewing in the west and a crack of lightning hits in the distance. There's an ominous rumble, but you don't stop, not yet. You know, cowboys lived awful lean out here. There was just 2 meals a day if you were lucky, and breakfast was way before the morning light, and supper sometime was way after the sun had set. So breakfast was probably sourdough biscuits and coffee, and some of them cowboys had to mount up and ride up, so a lot of them would just take that biscuit, put it in their pocket, get a swig of coffee, mount up on that horse, and head back out there to the herd. And they were long days, they were, but hey, them cowboys knew one thing they could count on, and that was the cook. And as the dust settled and the herd settled, they'd look back towards camp and they could see smoke just billowing up. They knew it was getting close to supper time. Now Cookie was already back at camp, hunched over a Dutch oven with the fire crackling low. Now there wasn't fresh vegetables or meat, but one thing that's on the menu tonight, beans and cornbread. And the history behind them beans, it stretches back thousands of years. High in protein, full of fiber, and dried, so they'd keep forever. Beans were a staple going down the trail, and they didn't just show up in the Old West. Pinto beans go back a long way, 7,000 to 8,000 years to be exact. They were first grown down in what's known as southern Mexico and Guatemala. Part of the planting system was called the Three Sisters method. That's bean, corn, and squash, grown together to help nourish the people. As time passed, those beans spread north through the trade routes, through the migration, and became a staple for the native tribes across what's now the U.S. The Cherokee, Navajo, Hopi, and the Pueblos. They all grew and cooked different kinds of beans and stews and breads that fed the entire communities. Then came the Spanish explorers in the 1500s who brought even more varieties like the black beans and the pintos up into the southwest. And by the time that cattle drives rolled around, beans were everywhere, from chuck wagons to army camps. Now, Cookie had a lot of things in that chuck wagon. I mean, he had Dutch ovens, lanterns, cross-cut saw, a pick, an axe, a shovel, but also he had a lot of food items. There was flour, there was sugar, there was coffee, and dried beans. Now, dried beans he either had in a sack, like a 50-pound sack, or maybe he had a small wooden barrel they'd pour the beans in and then just nail that lid down tight. But you know, in our cookbook, Comfort Food the Cowboy Way, we talked about a lot of provisions that old cook took down the trail. You know, on some of them longer drives, there might even been 1,700 pounds of flour. Now, he wouldn't carry that all at once. He would stop at like the Fleetwood store when he crossed the Red River, and he would stock up again as he went down the trail. But there's so many things, cinnamon, vanilla, different spices, dried chilies that he would take. And when he was talking about salt pork, a lot of times that would be rolled up in a bed sheet and then put in an old burlap bag, because he could just slice that salt pork out, whether he was putting it in beans or he was frying it for bacon. Cookie on a normal trail drive would probably have anywhere from 75 to 100 pounds of dried pinto beans. I mean, these things will keep forever, but folks, that is a lot of beans. If he could have figured up a way to gas that chuck wagon with that, he'd have had power all the way down the trail. Now, Cookie, when he had time, he would make a dessert. But there wasn't a lot of stuff growing down the trail where he gonna pick peaches or pick apricots. But he'd take dried fruit, sometimes as much as 300 pounds of dried fruit, and he'd put it in that wagon and he could store it. All you had to do was rehydrate it to make you a cobbler or whatever he was making. Now, if you're interested in chuck wagons and what old cook might have took down the trail, this book's got you covered. So when we're talking about cowboy beans, we're not just talking about going down the trail. We're talking about thousands of years of history and how they were cooked and how people survived on them. And guess what? We're cooking them up for cowboys again today, so let's get that old bean pot rolling. Well, got old Bertha fired up there a little we do. Now, I got these beans in this pot, and they already got water on them, you can see that. Now, we're at 7,600 feet elevation. So I soaked these beans about 4 hours. Now, being where we was in Oklahoma at 1,800 foot, I never soaked no beans. Bertha should just get the job done about 1 hour and 20 minutes. Elevation will affect what you cook in so many different ways, but it keeps bread from rising to its maximum height, and it keeps beans from getting done when you'd like them to. I can remember the first pot of beans that I ever cooked so many years ago in the Gila wilderness. I'm thinking, I ain't never soaked a bean. It took me 8.5 hours to get beans where I could eat them. So if you're in altitude, you'll know what I'm talking about. Now, when you're soaking beans, especially out here at this altitude, I like to go about 4 hours. Now, I'll change the water, and this is cold water, not hot. I'll change it after about 2 hours, rinse them beans really well, put them back in there, fill it back up with water again. Now, if you're having to soak beans and you're down there where it's really hot or you're really humid, you put some ice in that water, because beans can sour oh so quickly. So make sure that you keep an eye on that as you go. Now, Cookie going down the trail, he probably had him an old bean pot, he did, or a Dutch oven that had a good lid on it, sitting right in that wagon with him when he's podding down that trail, and he'd be soaking them beans, just going down through there. They'd be bouncing along. Might had a little dust in them. Hey, them cowboys, they was ready to eat. They didn't care what they had in them. They just wanted some of them. And he would have put, most likely, onion, salt pork, some dried chilies, whether it be a cascabel chili, chili de arbol for a little heat, an ancho chili to give it a little smoky flavor, and he just get him a little salt, a little pepper, cook them beans as he went along. Now, I cook beans a little different than Cookie does. Today, I'm using some smoked ham hock. White onion is my preference in beans, and I just quartered it up. I have a cascabel chili and a guajillo chili. So, took the seeds out of them, crumbled them up a little. They're gonna give us some flavor there. And you're probably thinking to yourself right now, it'd be a good time to add the salt, pepper, and seasoning and everything. No, it would not. We're gonna let them beans simmer there and come to a little old boil before we ever add no seasoning to them, because I wanna make sure that everything's going well, and I don't want that seasoning to boil away. So we'll put them in there at the right time. It makes a big difference when you're cooking beans. You know, going down the trail, there wasn't many different kinds of cooks. There was Hispanic, there was black, there was Irish, maybe some guys that got out of the army that been cooking there. But if it was a Mexican influence, I guarantee you there's probably going to be a lot of them dried chilies in there. He's going to make that stuff the way he grew up with it. And that's the way, even if you get like army cooks got on that old chuck wagon, they're probably going to use some navy beans or some lima beans, maybe add some salt pork, but also little different varieties of different seasoning that were made from different parts of the country. Cooks varied, so did the taste. Now, we brought these beans to a really hard rolling boil. Let them do that for about 10 minutes, and then I just turn them down to where they're just sort of at a medium boil or a high simmer. And folks, when you can put a spoon in there and pull it up and the skin cracks on that bean just a little, you know what that bean is telling you? It's hot in here. No, really, he's saying it is time for you to add the rest of that seasoning. Now, also, keep you some water on your burner or stove. Keep it hot, because when you have to add water to these beans, you don't want it to be cold water. You want it to be hot water. Ain't no sense in shocking them and thinking, hey, we're gonna be boiling along, swimming, doing the breaststroke, and then you pour the cold water in there thinking, what happened to the electric blanket? We be needing them beans to stay at that boil. But now it is time to add these. Now, old Cookie might not have had no fresh green chilies where he's at, but if he was coming out of New Mexico or it was an old Mexican cook, I guarantee you he had some. So we're gonna add a little in here. I really like to put our mesquite seasoning in beans because it's got some ancho chili powder in it. There's not heat, there's just smoke and flavor. And we haven't added any kind of salt to these as of yet. And I like to season sort of lightly the first go around, and then right before they get done, I will check them to see if they need some more. Now, you've seen me already add in there the dried cilantro, the cumin, and the smoked paprika. Now we're going to have a little original. And just go sort of on the light side there. Remember, this is a pound of beans. You don't think it's much, but the way I used to figure, a pound of beans feed 10 cowboys. Let's give it a stir, get the lid back on it. But one other thing that's happening here that I think we need to address, if we can, is them ham hocks is falling apart. Let me move that. So we're going to trim that meat off of them. Them bones have done boiled it, the good stuff in there. And we're going to save that. Put that one back in there. But you can see how that good hock meat has just fell off there when it falls apart like there. And let's just pull it apart, whatever you want to do. Careful, it is hot. And then we can put it all back in there here in a minute. Because that's going to make sure that you think, whoa, I'm getting a little bite of ham in every bite. Well, see me shred that ham up, throw her back in there. But also, I'm gonna put some jalapenos in mine. I added some green chili because I like that flavor that comes out of the Hatch Valley there, I do. But I want my beans to have a little bite. Now, if you don't wanna put them in there, that's all right. But Cookie and all the cowboys would rather you did. I don't seed them, I don't do nothing. I just slice them one way, slice them another, and then I just go to cutting them in there. Now, this is another one of them deals that can be dangerous and hazardous to your health. Don't scratch your butt or your eyes or pick your nose after you've done this till you washed your hands at least 12 times. Water level is down just a little, so we're gonna add a little to it. Not drowning them, we're not ever gonna put it up to here. And if you ever think you got too much water in there, when you put that lid back on there, just crack it. Some of that moisture will escape. But we need to get these back to a boil. They probably need to cook about another 45 minutes to an hour to get good and tender, and it'll be time to make some cornbread. Now you see me cooking on this old box I call Bertha. Now old Cookie probably didn't have one of these, he didn't. He probably just had him a little hole dug over there, what we call a pot rack, or two rods he drove in the ground, run another one across there, just had hooks. That way his fire pit was big enough he could hang his coffee, hang his bean pot over. He still had coals that he could dig out if he was baking bread or making biscuits. Now my stove, old Bertha, hey, good folks at Hasty Bake fixed me up, they did. She's 347 pounds hunk of burning love, and I do love her in the wintertime, but this time of year she'll make the hair fall off your legs. But the fire is contained all the way throughout, and that really helps. It is a controlled box of heat without any knobs, and it's only got one speed, and that is high. You know what went perfectly with a big old pot of beans Cookie had cooking going down the trail? Cornbread. But not only back in cowboy days, it's still going on today. There ain't nothing better than some good old cast iron cornbread. Long before there were wagons rolling or herds moving north, Native American tribes across North and Central America were growing and grinding corn. It wasn't just food, it was sacred. They used it for porridge, flatbreads, and cakes. Tribes like the Cherokee, Chickasaw, and the Creek made what they called ash cakes or Johnny cakes. Just ground cornmeal mixed with water and a little salt, patted flat and cooked right there on the hot rocks, or sometimes buried in the ashes of the fire. There was no baking powder or baking soda, just simple, hearty survival food. And that style of cooking, well, the settlers caught on quick. Out on the frontier, wheat flour was expensive and hard to come by, but cornmeal, you could grow it, grind it, and store it easy. By the 17 and 1800s, cornbread had become a staple across the South. Versatile, filling, and cheap to make. Folks came up with all kinds of ways to make it. There was spoon bread, which was sort of soft and custard-like, hoe cakes, fried right in a pan or even in a shovel over a fire. And of course, that classic skillet cornbread, baked in hot cast iron. They'd mix buttermilk, bacon grease, or lard to keep it moist, and you always wanted that crispy edge that only a seasoned skillet could give you. Now back in the cattle drive days in the 1870s, 1880s, Cookie always had a sack of cornmeal. Now you've seen them old flour sacks from long ago that held flour. Cornmeal came the same way, and Cookie could just open that old cloth sack, dip him out some of that cornmeal, put it in there with a little lard, maybe then had him some canned milk, add what he wanted to it, but he always cooked it in a hot Dutch oven to give it that golden brown crispy crust around the edge, and we're doing the same thing today. Well, the beans are sitting over there simmering. I added me a half a stick of butter to them, put the lid back on, just let them go mind their own business there on old Bertha. Now it is time to whoop up some cornbread. The yellow gold Cowboys love so much, they did. But Cookie might have fixed it a little different than I'm going to fix it, because he probably fixed a lot of hot water cornbread. Now really all that was with cornmeal, maybe a little lard, some hot water, mix it together. You could fry that stuff in a cast iron skillet right there. Hey, we even did a video on corn dodgers to where we fried it in a shovel. We did. But I'm going to start with yellow cornmeal, some flour, and some baking powder. Give that a good mixing. For the wet, I'm going to use me some buttermilk. Cookie probably made hot water cornbread unless he had some canned milk. But I like buttermilk and cornbread. I think it really goes well together. We're going to use about 1 1/4 cups, maybe a little more. And to that, 1 cackleberry.
Do they have eggs on the trail?
Only if he passed by a chicken, or maybe he's seen a nest of some turkey eggs, or maybe so did he climb up and get some eggs out of a nest. But I don't figure he packed many eggs on the trail. Now we're going to add a little baking soda, and the reason we do this in a separate bowl, baking soda and buttermilk sort of get a reaction going, and I like to get them over here and let them do their own thing before we put it in the cornmeal and flour. So we're going to stir that up. So we're just going to pour this in there. And I always went more by consistency on cornbread than I did measurements. Remember that bacon we chopped up? In it goes. We also have 1/4 cup of bacon grease. Recipes be saying something like, use oil. No, use bacon grease. Since we're in New Mexico and I love it so, and we're going to add a little green chilies. So I'm just going to use a spoon this time. Get them sprinkled around in there. Well, the beans is minding their own business. Now you remember that little old 10-inch oven that we had that bacon in that we fried up. Reserve a little dab of that grease, and I'm just going to show you. You just want about that much in there. But swirl it around in that pan. Make sure them edges is coated. And that thing is hot, because you want to preheat. If you're putting it in the oven, you got to preheat that skillet just for a little bit, to where when you pour this in there and you go to cook it, that crust is so good and crispy on the bottom. So in we go. It's time to get that off there. I got the coals ready. It is time to bake some cornbread, because I am been hungry all day, probably as hungry as them Cowboys been trailing them steers for a week. So we'll get the lid on it, get us a trivet, and go to cooking. Well, got me that Dutch oven there. Set it on about a 5-inch tall trivet. Coals around the outside edge, pretty tight there, right in line with really the bottom of that Dutch oven, and then pretty heavy coals on top, because we're going to cook this pretty hot, because we want to get that good crust on the bottom. Now, I'm using hardwood lump today. That's mesquite and oak from the Good Smoky Wood. But Cookie, You know, he going down the trail, he gathering up wood if he sees some, but if they're camping in a bare spot, you know what he might have cooked with a lot of times? Buffalo chips or cow chips. Now, they will get hot, but if he had wood, he would have used it. I really need y'all's help. There's a big debate going on. It even goes on at our house. How do you like your cornbread? You've seen me fix it today with buttermilk, green chilies, bacon. But what? People want to add sugar to it, honey to it, molasses to it. They want to make it like a cake. It's cornbread. It is not a cake. Shan likes it so sweet, it feels like we're eating dessert. So I need y'all to comment below, what is the proper way to cook cornbread? Savory or sweet? Old Cookie might not have got to eat till after every cowboy was done, but me, I got my crew laying in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and just have me a bite of these beans. I've been waiting on them for about 4 hours. Whoop them mules in the butt, get her on down the trail and fix them beans, cause oh my gosh, they are good.
Now, do you think Cookie would have had a happy dance?
I really do. So they've been out there 4 or 5 weeks, ain't had a bath, wind and dirt been blowing every day, and he'd go over there, find that old creek under a cottonwood tree and them long handles, he'd do a little shuffle while he's going, thinking it's Saturday night. And folks, I need y'all to do me a favor, if you would, por favor, please. You know, give us a thumbs up, a like, hit that button, helps our channel grow, but also if you're not subscribed, please do, and share the video with all your friends and neighbors, but share the food too. But it is with great pride, honor, and privilege that I tip my hat to all the servicemen and women and all the veterans that have kept that old flag flying over camp. I commend you all. But get in here, come on, quickly, closely. I am finna give you what? A great big hug for them beans take effect. God bless you each and every one, and I'll see you down the Beans and Cornbread Trail. Hey folks, quick announcement. You know, National Day of the Cowboy is coming up. It is, and I'd like for you to join me in Oklahoma City, National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. For more information, you can check on their website. We'd love to see you there. All right, now settle down here and let's have a little story time. If y'all would have been going down the trail with old Cookie, do y'all think y'all could have caught a rabbit and brought it into camp? Probably not, huh? There's Dooker, some cornbread. Meiji, some cornbread. Hey, right up here. Good boy. Woo-woo. There's yours. And we'll just see how far this will go. Here we go. Everybody had some. Tails is wagging.